foreign minister suddenly quits. How may this affect his signature 2015 nuclear deal? In hope of a ceasefire in Afghanistan, Washington and the Taliban hold their highest level talks yet as they try to end the 17-year Afghan war. And getting ready for China's annual political two sessions. Today, we look at an expanding set of rules that let people seek justice against the government. Our top story today, the DPRK leader has arrived in Vietnam. Kim Jong Un is scheduled to hold a summit with US President Donald Trump on Wednesday and Thursday. Upon his arrival, Kim will pay an official goodwill visit to Vietnam and is expected to meet with Vietnamese President Nguyen Phu Trong. Well, CGTN's special coverage on the Trump-Kim second summit begins now. Let's go to my colleague Tian Wei, who is in a special CGTN studio in Hanoi's International Media Center. She has with her our team of reporters and also a panel of experts. Hello there, Tian Wei. Afternoon from Beijing. What do you have for us today?
Well, thank you, Dongning. As you can see, I'm sitting here in the special CGTN studio near the iconic Hoan Kiem Lake in downtown Hanoi, warning our viewers all over the world about the latest related to the second Trump-Kim summit. And this is a special day because the chairman, Kim Jong Un from DPRK, already arrived in the city. And for now, let's call to our reporter Han Peng, who is waiting there, bringing us the latest. Han Peng is now right at Hanoi's Melia Hotel, where Kim is likely to stay, at least according to earlier report. Han Peng, what can you bring to us?
Hi, Tianwei. Global reporters have been sticking out right here since very early this morning. And right behind me, you can see this route. Actually, this is the very likely route where Kim Jong Un's motorcade will pass through. And if we pan a little bit to our left, we can see that Melia Hotel, the building, the gray building with the red stripes. That is the very likely hotel where Kim Jong Un will be staying at. Actually, it's very today we actually entered into that hotel, and the security wasn't beefed up at the time. But just yesterday, the metal scanners were put in place and the security has been beefed up. And today, apparently, the entire block has been blockaded, and it's very difficult. It is not allowed for us to actually move closer to that hotel. And it's also very interesting that that hotel is the place where the White House correspondent, the White House press center, was once based. But just an hour ago, we received a confirmed piece of information from Yonhap news agency that the White House correspondents have all been moved out for security reasons in accordance with the top leaders of the Vietnam government. So a lot of interesting development is happening here, and we have saw a lot of police cars moving back and forth on this street, and they are very likely to be clearing out this street to make sure that if Kim Jong Un's motorcade will pass through this place, everything will be safe. And we also learned that inside Kim Jong Un's delegation, there's high-rank economic officials inside Kim Jong Un's delegation. So it seems that analysts believe that they are trying to, on top of Kim Jong Un's mind, one of the issues is economic reforms for the DPRK. Actually, if you think about it, the reason they choose to have this second Trump-Kim summit in Hanoi is because they are trying to make sure that both sides are making a symbolic gesture that Vietnam might be a model for the DPRK to carry out reforms, because they share a lot of history. The DPRK and Vietnam used to be in bitter wars with the United States, one in Korean War in the 1950s and one in the Vietnam War in the 1970s. And there was a lot of hatred in both countries against the United States. But today we can see Vietnam has become completely different. It's went through economic reforms, and today it rose from one of the poorest countries to one of the most important, prominent emerging economies here in Southeast Asia. But the DPRK is apparently pursuing a very different path. But today, we are hoping that the second Trump-Kim summit will bring some difference for the Northeast Asia to see some changes and open a new chapter here for the world. And we can see there's a lot of stir right behind me. People are moving back and forth. There's been a lot of policemen very nervous. They're trying to make sure that everything is going right. So probably we will see a historic moment happening right here down the street. Back to Tianwei.
Thank you very much, Han Peng. Of course, we see people are waiting along the road just to see the arrival. We do not know yet whether Chairman Kim is going to stay in that hotel because a lot of information are not made public for now for the safety reasons. But certainly the motorcades and the police cars are passing by. Let's see what's going to happen later on that street. Thank you so much, Han Peng. And now let's talk to our correspondent Tony Chung, who's at the Hanoi Opera House in the center of the Vietnamese capital. Tony, you've been to DPRK several times, and this time you're here to cover the second Trump-Kim summit. What is the latest you can bring to us from where you are standing right now?
Well, you can see the impact of Kim Jong Un's motorcade here. We're a couple of blocks away from the hotel where he's staying, and the traffic has come to an absolute standstill. Very little's moving at the moment. I think this is a small taste for the residents of Hanoi of what they've got to look forward to. Just one of the leaders involved in this summit so far has yet arrived, and already things have come to a grinding halt. Of course, it's going to be a lot more complicated here than it was in Singapore, where the two leaders were pretty much isolated on Sentosa Island. Hanoi is a much older city, much more difficult to control the situation, but we have seen the Vietnamese authorities putting a lot of security in place over the last 24 hours. I think they're trying to manage the disruption to this part of the city, trying not to let it bring the whole city to a grinding halt. But obviously, with the security concerns of both the DPRK and the United States, it is going to have a pretty serious impact over the next couple of days.
I see. Well, as you can see, over there, Tony, on the streets where you're standing, a lot of people are passing by. It seems that things are getting a little bit easier since the earlier blockade. I'm sure there will be a lot going on later in the day. In the 1980s, both Vietnam and the DPRK faced economic difficulties, but while Pyongyang turned inward, Hanoi apparently opened up to foreign investment. In hosting the summit, Vietnam may show the DPRK a way, some say, to successfully develop. CGTN's reporter Jessica Stone has the story.
In 2003, you couldn't find medical machines like these in Vietnam's hospitals. Newborn babies were dying. Chang Tuet Na saw a need.
That's why we realized that if with all the very the simple medical equipment, we know that we can reduce the mortality rate and we can save more babies.
What started out as a business to fix medical devices soon became a company to manufacture them. Charities helped fund production. The government lowered the cost of patents and importing components.
We are the first company in Vietnam ever make the medical equipment. So the government gives us a lot of privilege.
Now Na is eyeing a facility 3 times this size in a new low-rent biotechnology park. Vietnam has created hundreds of industrial zones to attract foreign investment across the country.
In 1997, Hanoi opened the Tan Long Industrial Park, which is now home to companies like Canon, Panasonic, and Yamaha.
Lê Dong Duyen advised Hanoi during that period and has twice spoken to officials visiting from the DPRK.
They must give their power up to the business, to the private sector, to the market, and they need to learn how to keep the market well developed in a balanced way. And it is not easy.
But this week, the DPRK's official newspaper promoted a nation-first spirit, casting doubt on whether Pyongyang's leaders believe they need a new model for economic development. Yet, for entrepreneur Daniel Nguyen, Vietnam's openness to foreign know-how and capital has made it the place to build Dong Khai Distillery. It's the first to make gin in Hanoi.
As a developing economy, we're able to actually set the precedence where there was no law before. we're actually helping to write some of the law and the legal policy and the understanding of what the Vietnamese government knows as Jin.
Wen suggests Pyongyang can rely on its study of Marxism to find its own balance between progress and protection.
There are pros and cons to everything, of course, but I think opening up allows you to have options, and options are never bad.
Jessica Stone, CGTN, Hanoi.
Vietnam is willing to demonstrate to the DPRK what economic reform and opening up means to its economy. Well, it is about Vietnam, but it's more about what the second Trump-Kim summit is going to bring to us and what's going to happen to the Korean Peninsula. There's no better person to ask to than Christopher Hill, a professor at the University of Denver and a former U.S. representative to the six-party talks. Mr. Hill discussed whether China and the U.S. will work closely on the denuclearization issue this time. Ambassador Hill, I still want to have some concrete opinions from you about whether China and the United States are going to closely work together on the denuclearization issue, given the souring of relations, at least apparently taking place. How much trust and credibility left about each other really is there for the two to work together on this issue, and how crucial it is from your perspective that the two do work together, sir?
I think it's very crucial. I don't think we can have a successful conclusion of negotiations with North Korea if China is not in agreement with what is being done. China has a great interest in North Korea. To understand that, one just needs to look at a map. So I think there needs to be very active consultations between the U.S. and China, and to make sure that we all share the same goals and are pulling in the same direction. I worry sometimes that we don't have enough of a dialogue on these issues. I worry sometimes that our dialogue gets more on other issues, which are important, no doubt, but I don't think there's anything more important than nuclear weapons on the Korean Peninsula. So I would hope that right after this meeting that we will see some more effort between the U.S. and China to work more closely together. I would, if I were handling this, I would make sure that those countries like South Korea and Japan, that is U.S. allies, they need to be fully brought into the conversation. They need to understand it. But I feel very strongly that China needs to understand precisely what is going on. The U.S. side claims it's been informing China of these things, but I think clearly there needs to be an improved, I'll use that old term, pattern of cooperation between the U.S. and China.
That's Ambassador Christopher Hill, a professor from Denver University and also the former U.S. representative to the six-party talks on the Korean Peninsula. You are watching a special coverage coming from downtown Hanoi on the second Trump-Kim summit on CGTN. I'm Tian Wei, and it is the latest news that Chairman Kim Jong Un from DPRK already arrived at the Melia Hotel in downtown Hanoi, not that far actually from where our studio is. We're going to bring you all the latest as it happens. For now, let's go to our interview with the UN representative here in Hanoi. His name is Malhotra. He's the resident coordinator of the United Nations. He shares his views on how Vietnam evaluates its significance in the region and beyond. Now, Vietnam is hosting the second Kim-Trump summit, getting all of these attention, including us traveling all the way in order to get a glimpse of it and report about that. But the question is, how is Vietnam trying to evaluate its significance in this region and beyond? From your observation, what role does it aspire to play, whether it's in economy, trade, geopolitics, or its relations with its neighbors?
Well, I'll start by saying that Vietnam is strongly committed to multilateralism at both the regional level and at the global level. This is very clear, and this gives us as the UN a very important role to support Vietnam at both regional and global level. Vietnam's also now at a stage where it is confident that it can play and contribute to global peace and security. This is a wonderful story for a country that was at war only 40 years ago. And so Vietnam is increasing its contributions to global peacekeeping. This is a top area of priority for me as the UN resident coordinator. We've been working with them to strengthen their capacity to support global peacekeeping much more. The whole area of South-South cooperation, where the Vietnamese experience of poverty reduction, of economic growth, etc., can be shared particularly with many African countries, but also some other countries in this region. These are all things that Vietnam is now willing to put emphasis on and energy on because it wants to be seen as a good global citizen. It wants to be seen as a good regional citizen. And as you've seen outside, Hanoi is the city of peace, which UNESCO declared 20 years ago, is something they're very proud of. And I think with 2020 being a year where they will take over ASEAN as the chair, and they are running for a non-permanent seat in the UN Security Council for the 2020-21 year, what they're doing now in terms of hosting this, I think is totally consistent with all their aspirations to be a good regional citizen, a good international citizen, and to showcase what they've been able to do here to transform their country and society over the last 30, 35 years.
That is Kamal Malhotra, who is the resident coordinator of the United Nations, in fact, the one that representing United Nations here in Vietnam. As you may know, since decades ago, the United Nations has played a very important role in the development of Vietnam. Having said that, we are bringing in the locals into our studio here in downtown Hanoi, and having with me right now is Miss He Thi Tu Halong. I hope I pronounced your name right.
That's correct.
Just learned.
Yeah.
You and I, welcome to our studio, first of all.
Thank
You and I were walking in the streets just to get a little familiar about Hanoi. A lot of roadblocks, by the way.
Yes.
To welcome the leaders from the DPRK and the US. Are you excited about that as a resident?
Yes, I am, because we haven't seen this very often. So of course all the roads and coming to the center of the city and nearby all the hotels are blocked right now. So yeah, it's one of the, I haven't seen it like very, very often. We are very excited because of this as well. And journalists and reporters everywhere.
Everywhere, yes, indeed, we're everywhere. You can see many of us are running around.
Yeah.
Having said that though, I mean, this is the second time Vietnam in recent years has been hosting big events. Earlier in 2017, there was the APEC Summit being held in Da Nang, and now this time in Hanoi. From a resident of Hanoi and a citizen of Vietnam, how do you see the country is trying to at least showing itself more to the rest of the world?
We are so proud and we are very happy because of that. Because by doing that, and also have a chance to organize on the big event in international level, I think a lot of people from around the world can also see our city, our country, the image of Vietnam and what we are represent for. I think we are trying to get a very good image of a very peaceful and beautiful city in the city, I mean in the country, and also
and certainly the beautiful smiles of the Vietnamese as well, as you have just beautifully demonstrated earlier to us. But you know, there's one thing, as a Vietnamese, I would guess a very interesting phenomenon. On the one hand, DPRK and Vietnam are all communist countries, but on the other hand, Vietnam and the United States, though had a war, now are relatively much better terms with one another. That's why Hanoi was being chosen as the venue, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how do you see this interesting balance? You and your many friends here in Vietnam needs to balance between these two people and the two countries.
Because the war has been put in the past for a long, long time ago. We are now growing up and we study overseas as well. We have many friends coming from overseas, and also we going to overseas as well. So that to us, we are familiar with the very global international environment right now in Hanoi. For us, there's actually no such a big change. We are used to it and we are very happy to see it happening every day.
Yeah, Ms. Halong, I understand from my colleague that you've been establishing your own small private enterprises here in Hanoi and trying to provide service to many of the travelers coming to the city. So how is the economy to you as an individual booming, and what does that mean to you? How do you see your future here in this city?
Because it's actually right. Also, as the opening up of the country, we also have more chance to approach to all the resort of great providers all over the world. So in order, it also means that when we have great providers, we can also be a very great service provider in where we are right now. By saying that, we have more international clients coming, and when they heard about us, they will come to us and choose us. So it's create a very big opportunity for us to opening new business and create new more chance and opportunity for more job as well.
Right. Well, you have big events like this, certainly Vietnam showing to the rest of the world what they can do, but you also have neighbors like China, the Belt and Road Initiative, you have your many partners in ASEAN, so I guess it's going to be quite a different future that we're talking about.
Yes,
but for now, we really want to appreciate your coming to our studio here in downtown Hanoi. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And that is all the time we have from here in Hanoi. We go back to Beijing, where we will further analyze the main sticking points between the two sides over denuclearization, and also the differences between the American nuclear policy towards the DPRK as compared with Iran. Over to you, Dongning.
Indeed. Thank you very, very much, Tian Wei, reporting from Hanoi, where the second Trump-Kim meeting is going to happen, and we'll further dive into the summit later in the show. And now, since Trump-Kim meeting in June last year, the two sides have failed to reach a consensus on multiple issues, actually. So here's a look at key sticking points there.
And I think we can have a very good summit. I think we'll have a very tremendous summit. We want denuclearization, and I think you'll have a country that will set a lot of records for speed in terms of an economy.
The U.S. president is upbeat before his second big meeting with the DPRK leader, but few analysts share the same optimism. They believe progress has been slow in the denuclearization talks. Trump and Kim met in June last year in Singapore and agreed in principle to work towards the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. Though the rhetoric has cooled, the path to permanent peace remains a rocky one. There are three key sticking points that have stalled the current round of negotiations. First is the process of denuclearization. The DPRK believes the U.S. must take corresponding measures to the ones it has taken. It says as proof of its intentions, the dismantling of nuclear testing site and no new nuclear missile tests. But U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo stressed complete and verifiable denuclearization before economic sanctions can be eased. Though recently the U.S. has indicated that it may take some corresponding steps to resolve the impasse. Pyongyang also wants the U.S. to agree to an official end to the Korean War and guarantee the security of Kim's regime, but Washington insists it should first sign a disarmament deal. Experts say the United States is reluctant as a formal end to war would undermine the rationale for stationing 28,000 American troops in South Korea. This leads to the third and possibly the most contentious part, the definition of denuclearization. For Pyongyang, it means reciprocal steps to get rid of nuclear weapons. This includes requiring the U.S. to remove its nuclear umbrella from the peninsula. But for many in Washington, it means Kim handing over his nuclear weapons and missile systems and allowing access to international inspectors. In November last year, the DPRK's official news agency published an article demanding Washington revoke its nuclear threat to the Korean peninsula before asking it to denuclearize. The United States operates a network of nuclear-capable submarines and bombers off the coasts of South Korea and Japan. Pyongyang remains skeptical of Washington's motives, as it doesn't want to end up like Libya, where the then leader Muammar Gaddafi gave up his nuclear ambitions only to be later overthrown by the U.S. and its allies in 2011. So can the United States convince Kim Jong Un to trust them and abandon his nuclear arsenal? Analysts say that won't be easy. Was Na Yan said, Bang Dongxuan for CGTN.
All right, we're now joined in studio by Mr. Wang Junsheng, an associate professor at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences National Institute of International Strategy. He's also an expert on the Korean Peninsula situation. Welcome to Global Watch, Professor Wang. Well, early in July last year, after the first summit, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said DPRK can actually replicate Hanoi's path to normalizing relations with Washington and also the way the country has been seeking prosperity. Do you think that Vietnamese path is actually suitable for DPRK?
Yeah, I think it's my great pleasure to be here. I think it's very popular that many scholars to compare these two countries. Yeah, I think between these two countries, they have very clear differences. Yes, such as political system, and the culture and the history. But although this, there are still many similarities, such as both two countries belong to socialist country. At least they claim yes, they are socialist country. As we know, since last year, North Korea have focused on, changed their strategic focus to economic development. Yeah, I think for North Korea, they are thinking about how to make the Workers' Party of Korea to stay in power. At the same time, to realize economic development. In this respect, I think Vietnam's experience can tell North Korea something.
Well, so you think that actually Vietnamese path is somewhat suitable for DPRK given all what you said, but do you think Kim Jong Un actually will take that path to transform the situation or transform his regime in the way that the US or other countries or even UN wants it to? Because in his head, I think the priority goes to the safety of his regime, which is largely guaranteed by the possession of nuclear weapons.
Yes, I think we agree that for North Korea, the most priority is regime safety. Currently, to say maybe nuclear weapons maybe plays very, very big role on this. But we should keep remember. Nuclear weapons is not equivalent to regime safety. Yeah, because in the world, many countries without nuclear weapons, they also feel very, very safety, such as maybe the sound international environment and good economic development.
But without nuclear weapons, do you think if DPRK is just another poor country, do you think US will actually care about the country so much?
So I think it should let North Korea leaders to think about what they want. Yeah, keep weapons, nuclear weapons, such as in the past. They also feel very, very unsafety. But now, yeah, especially since last year, they talk about, okay, we can to denuclearize us. But as we can see today, yeah, international community give North Korea a lot. Yeah, I think for North Korea leader, for North Korea regime, they probably maybe feel currently is more safety than last year, even before last year.
US has always been skeptical of DPRK's sincerity, and at the same time DPRK is also doubting the US intentions. Mutual trust is certainly lacking here. So how just such kind of suspicions would factor into the assessment of the outcome of this meeting?
Yeah, I think the low trust is a bigger problem between North Korea and the US. There are several reasons. The first reason is I think the time for these two countries get along with each other is still very limited. This is only the second summit. Also, even since the first engagement since last year until now, no more than 1 year. Yeah, so I think they need more time to understand with each other. Another reason is because North Korea nuclear issue is more complicated. It's involved in, not only the relation between North Korea and the US, but also US alliance in Northeast Asia, major power relations, two coalitions, Cold War structure. I think it's very, very complex. But I think this year the trust, today if we look back, is much better than last year.
So the mechanism of meeting the summit between the two leaders actually is building the mutual trust on, actually.
Right.
Iran's foreign minister, let's talk about the latest developments here. Iran's foreign minister Javad Zarif, Tehran's lead negotiator of the nuclear deal, announced his resignation unexpectedly today, leading actually future negotiations between Iran and the West in doubt, in uncertainty indeed. So even with a deal right there in front of them, Iran and US still have a rather big and obvious disputes on this matter. What kind of signal do you think is a negative signal being sent to the DPRK?
I think it's definitely sent us a very negative signal. Yeah, but we should see the differences between these two issues. Although they belong to nuclear issue, but it's also very different. The first reason is that I think from a technological aspect to say, North Korea nuclear program is much mature than Iran. For North Korea nuclear program, we know it's at the final stage, but for Iran, it's just only, at the beginning stage. Another reason, just like I mentioned earlier, North Korea nuclear issue is much more complex. Yeah, it's involved too many aspects. So I think for North Korea nuclear issue, I think it's only at the beginning of the long march. We should keep remember what lessons we can learn from Iran issue, but also we should keep in mind what's the differences. I think we need our wisdom. We should work harder. We should, I think, step by step towards the final goal. Yeah.
All right, at least we have a start there. All right, thank you very much, Mr. Wang Junsheng, an associate professor at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Thank you very much for your insight. You've been watching Global Watch on CGTN. Here's what's coming up. Iran's foreign minister quits in a sudden announcement. Who is Mohammad Javad Zarif, and what could have prompted this move? A U.S. official meets with a senior Taliban leader during their ongoing effort to end the Afghan war. Is stability within reach or still too far-fetched? And escalating tensions between neighbors, Pakistan claims the Indian Air Force crossed the line of control amid the fallout from the recent Kashmir attack.
We ask.
We listen. We talk to lawmakers
and average people alike.
We report.
We probe. We interpret the new laws and policies coming out of China's top legislature.
CGTN is fully geared up to offer you a front row seat at the annual sessions of China's top legislative
and advisory bodies, the NPC and the CPPCC.
Welcome back to Global Watch. Just now, with in the interview with Professor Wang, we mentioned the sudden resignation by the Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif and the possible